Okay, you about ready to get started, Jessica?
Yeah, buddy.
All right, cool. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We hope that you guys are going to get a lot of value out of this. So now's a good time of the year, depending on your industry. A lot of you guys have seasons, and some of you guys are just firing up. Some of you are just winding down. But whatever the case, if it's a little slow for you right now, now's a really good time to be thinking about, how to improve your business, what you can automate, what you could do better to attract more customers and get things streamlined. So we're going to share some best practices today of just different things that we've done, we've seen that work in regards to improving your website, improving your just visibility and online presence on the internet so that you can attract more customers to your business. So I'm Zach. I'm the co-founder of HookLead. We're a digital marketing agency, and Jessica is joining us today as well. She's from
Hi.
Indexic. You want to give them a little quick rundown about your background, Jessica?
Hey, yeah. So I'm Indexic sales coordinator. So I work pretty heavily between the customer service team and the sales team, just kind of making sure everybody has what they need to take care of all of our clients. I'm a software engineering student, so I do have a pretty decent background working with some web design, and just general kind of software coding and things like that. So I've seen working with Indexic on the sales end and kind of the back end of it, how a software like aRes and aWaiver that we produce can be useful for you.
Awesome. Cool. So getting into what we'll be chatting about today, before we kind of get into anything, we want to talk about why your website is even important and kind of how it plays into the bigger picture and has an impact on your business. Obviously, if you guys are here, it's probably the next two things that brought y'all here, and that's the best practices for your website as well as your marketing. So we're going to go over lots of actionable things that you can do that that actually work and create and bringing people to your website as well as converting them into paid customers. And then if some of the stuff is over your head or just bandwidth constraints, we can kind of teach you how to get started with some of these tactics as well. So before we kind of get into all the tactics and the hows and stuff like that, let's start with the why. And I like this statistic here because it's definitely literally where we're at in time right now. Is just the effect that mobile is having, especially on y'all's particular industry. A lot of the travel and tourism, if you think about the bookings that are made, I don't know a percentage, but I'm sure a lot of them are going to be on the phone because, a lot of folks are traveling, if they're going to go on a tour boat or go skiing or something like that, their computer is their phone. And so being mindful of that, not only are people using it a ton now, to find businesses like y'all's, but it's growing, more and more people. So not only having a website, but being prepared for the present and the future and making
Mhm.
sure that website is optimized for mobile devices.
Absolutely. One of the main things, especially if you're selling or want the ability to book anything online, if you have a website, you want people to be able to use that website across multiple types of devices. Because, like you said, more often than not, people are, especially if they're traveling, they're not taking, their desktop with them or their laptop most of the time. They're going to be out, they're going to be on their phone. You need to be able to book kind of anywhere or sell anywhere or even just have your website available anywhere that somebody can connect to a device and browse the internet. So being mindful of the types of products that you're using within your website, just kind of as you start building it up or if you're trying to expand, is definitely something that you should keep in the forefront of your mind.
Yeah, definitely. And if you just kind of break it down to just, very simplistic and basic rules of thumb, and just think about it, even if you're not a tech or a marketing person, first impressions are a big deal, and that goes across pretty much everything. So, can you imagine like if I just came to Charleston, I want to do a boat tour, So I jump on my phone, I hop around some sites, and I get to one that just looks like it was made in the 1900s. It's
Yeah.
god awful looking. To me, I'm like, well, that's a bad first impression. Are their boats going to be all rickety like their website? Is
Yeah.
their boat, from like the 1920s as well? So you got to think about that, and also think about, like, in regards to first impressions. Um, all of you guys are mostly in localized markets, meaning you have a
Mhm.
direct competitor or competitors, and you guys probably all know each other, very familiar. Think about your number one competitor. I'm willing to guess that they have a good looking website.
Yeah.
just gonna take a guess here.
And it's super intimidating, especially maybe if you've been in business for a long time and you've been able to prosper without even having a website. It can be really scary to even get started. You sometimes it's just there's so much information available that it's really hard to know where to even start first. So, I mean, speaking to somebody within like a maybe a web design agency, there's a lot of really simple create your own websites available now. Um, Something like that is honestly, for the most part, they're really easy to use. A lot of them are drag and drop. You just kind of input the information that you have, and some people are able to create their own site within a day or so and get it up and running. And think about how many more people you're going to be able to reach if you actually go from having maybe a super outdated website or no website at all to having something that's functional and up to date and kind of modern looking.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, even if you have a website, but maybe you got it, 5 or 10 years ago, could look pretty dated at this point. Or maybe it's not optimized, to really attract people. But, if you think about it, like, that's a whole nother avenue, like you mentioned, of
Yeah.
generating business. So you have your hours of operation when you're answering the phone and taking bookings and stuff like that. But your website is there 24/7. If you
Hmm.
have an optimized website, it can generate its own traffic, via advertising or search engine optimization, can bring in new prospects. If you have booking buttons or booking widgets, telephone numbers, forms, those that can convert your traffic into sales.
Yeah.
So just imagine, like, you're eating dinner with your family, at 7 o'clock at night. The office is closed, if you will, but people are still on your website booking, grabbing their tickets for the next day. So you're getting sales, and you're not even really doing anything for it. So think about, your website is not just a online brochure.
Mhm.
That's really kind of an older model. Nowadays, websites can be your top salesperson, and one of your best channels for driving additional sales to your website. I mean, to your business.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so many people book last minute. People's plans change. Sometimes something falls through and they want to find something comparable or something in the area, something maybe they're trying to find out if the activities that you have available are safe for their family, especially if when people travel, it's usually mothers, the matriarch of the family, that is the person that's booking everything. So you want to be able to have as much information as possible about what you're selling um, on your website and kind of available and making it comprehensive for everybody so that they know what they're getting into as they're booking because life kind of moves fast, especially even if you're on a vacation, anything can change. So having, comprehensive information laid out in like a nice organized way is definitely a pretty big part of putting your website together.
Yeah, so you could think about your website almost as the, we talked about first impressions, but also
Mhm.
part of the beginning of the experience. Like you said, kind of setting expectations of, do they need to make sure they wear shoes, or instead of flip-flops, are there certain safety things, certain special places, designated areas that they're supposed to park. So you can kind of set those expectations, and start that experience right up front. And we mentioned with the kind of going back to that 24/7 sales engine,
Mhm.
and that example of, you're eating dinner with your family and people are booking. Not only is that going to help you gross sales because you're essentially available for selling 24/7. But the fact that that customer was able to book online without you being present is
Mhm.
another way to streamline operations. So think about that person that grabbed their tickets at 7 o'clock at night. That's one less person you have to call back, and
Yeah.
try to chase down and get them to book online. You streamline, a lot of that whole process, which gives you a competitive advantage. We did another webinar a couple months ago. I can't remember the exact stat, but it was something to the effect of like, I don't know, like 70% of people
Book after hours.
book after
Yeah.
hours. And then also, like, if you don't offer online booking or things like that, that can be a deterrent and a disadvantage.
Yeah.
And they're like wanting that. So not just gaining sales, but the functionality and impression of your website could cause you to lose sales too. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It's like use it as a tool to grow, but also make sure you're not ignoring it, so you're not missing out on potential sales. And then kind of the last important thing, which I know this is on everybody's minds, is just the dependence on OTAs.
Mhm.
The trip advisors, don't get me wrong, they're great and they can drive a lot of business. But at the same time, you're paying them a pretty hefty, commission or however that's
Yeah.
structured, for that sale. So they're taking a big piece of that pie out of your sale. Um, the
Sometimes I
more,
think that's upwards of 20 or 30% of each sale.
and that's,
It's a
I
lot.
don't know what people's margins are, but after you slice 20-30% away, that leaves very, very slim
Yeah, not a lot.
margins. So, if you think about the advertising budget that you put with, OTAs,
Mhm.
some of that you could invest in your website so that you could be
Yeah,
getting your own business because you don't have to pay that 30%, if they're booking through your own website and they're finding you through your own channels.
exactly. And kind of circling back around to having your website optimized correctly to be able to show up in search engines when people are looking for maybe just a type of service versus looking directly for your company. Having your website optimized correctly can definitely, it can bypass the need for having to use like a secondary OTA to kind of help draw in that traffic, but you're also able to target the audiences that you want to target the most. It's very possible to target people that live in particular areas or are within a certain age range or a particular gender, or even people that search often for other types of things that are related to what you do. So, having the most up-to-date information on the back end of your site really can save you money in the long run, with advertising costs and things like that.
Yeah, that's true. If you think about what you invest with OTAs, and you could also look at it as my website is a place I need to invest in. Your advertising budget, your getting a website built budget, think of that as like your advertising budget for OTAs. And you also don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah,
You want to
exactly.
make sure that, like, well, what if TripAdvisor, I don't know, they do something wrong and Google slaps them with a penalty and now they're not found. Well, what if
Yeah,
that's like 80% of your business? You could go under in a week. All of a sudden you wouldn't have any sales. So kind of building up your website, still using OTAs because obviously they work, they drive people, that's great, but just make sure you're thinking about other ways to drive people to your website as well, so
yeah,
you're not so dependent on one channel.
exactly.
And kind of going back to the first impressions, this is just a quick stat that people admit that they go to a site that looks old and kind of rickety, and that leaves a lasting impression on them. And they could be less likely to return. Kind of going back to the example of like, hey, this is a really old, outdated site.
Mhm.
Is their boat, is their machine, are their equipment going to be outdated? Am I going to die if I choose this company?
Yeah,
It just kind of sets the stage of, the level of professionalism needs to be end to end. Your brand extends, outside of just your brick and mortar in your location. It extends throughout all your digital
exactly.
marketing footprint. So getting into kind of like, now we know it's important, what do we do? Now that we know that
Yeah,
we don't want the OTAs in our pocket, we want to make sure we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. What do we do? So one of the biggest things that I know Jessica sees and I know I see is, first off, think about like why people are coming to your site and what do you want them to do and what do they want to do. So
Mhm.
at the just basic, most simplest thing is if they go to your homepage, make sure that they can contact you or book without having to go look around and click. This 70% stat of people not having a call to action on their homepage, I really believe it
Yeah,
because I don't know how many times I've been to a site and I'm like, where's their phone number? Where's the booking button? Where's the form? Like, I don't, how do I,
exactly.
and it's frustrating. A lot of times I'll just go look for somebody else as opposed to clicking around on a site. It
Mhm.
just gets really frustrating.
And you definitely don't have to have a very large or overly complicated website to get your point across. There are plenty of people that, you might just have one or two pages. That's all that you need. Maybe you just need a little bit of information about what you actually offer, some pricing, some photos, and then a button to book and a button maybe to email somebody or contact somebody. It doesn't have to be, an overwhelming amount of information on your website, but kind of on the other end of that, some places, especially if you offer maybe a more dangerous type of activity, you're going to want to have information readily available for that so that, somebody knows what they're getting into. They know whether or not this is going to be safe for their family or themselves. Um, and you don't want somebody to have to kind of like Google whether or not parasailing is dangerous and take you away from your own website and kind of, you know, you're going to lose the chance for somebody to book directly with you if you don't have the information that you need available within your own website and kind of organized properly. I think we've all been to a website where there's kind of information all over the place. Things don't make sense. You're digging around to try to find somebody's phone number or try to find an answer to a simple question that should be pretty front and center. Um, but one of the ways to kind of help minimize that, calls to action, which would be your book now buttons, your give us a call buttons, your send us an email buttons. You want to make sure that you have that prominently displayed wherever you think would be best for somebody to see it on your website, which is usually immediately as soon as you click into it.
Yeah, and on that note, as you're thinking about the call to actions on your site, also keep the multi device, the different
Mhm.
device types in mind, because going back to the percentage of people that could be on their mobile device, little things can make a big difference. When I say big difference, it could impact your revenue.
Yeah,
Little things like the phone number, like if I'm on a mobile device, they have just adding a little snippet of code can make the phone number where I can click to call. So
yeah,
hey, there's a number. I just click it, bam, it's already calling. I don't have to be like, oh, let me try to remember it and then type it in and go back and look at it and remember it, type it in, click to
hmm,
call, quick, snippet of code from your webmaster. And, bam, you make it that much easier for people to book. You're not frustrating them. Same with the book now buttons, make sure that they perform and work well on mobile devices too.
yeah.
Um, kind
And
of have
a
that
lot
mobile
of,
first approach.
yeah, a lot of website builders now, like people, WordPress or Wix or anything like that you're using to build your site. Most of them now have call to action categories that, you can add different types of buttons in, and it kind of like does it for you. You just put your phone number in and you place the button wherever you want the button, and then now somebody can call you just like that, basically.
Yeah, and then also thinking about the color. So
Hmm.
making sure there's contrast. So you want to make sure a call to action, specifically if it's a button, that there's contrast. So like if your site is white, for example, you need like a bold, maybe a red or a gold or something like that color. If like you have a lot of, if your website's mostly blue, I wouldn't make your button colors blue, 'cause they just won't be noticed. You want to have a contrasting color if your site's blue, maybe a white button, just something that stands out and pops, because you got to think when people hit a website, I can't remember the stat, but it's only like what 2 seconds you have to kind of either, you know, keep them or they
Yeah.
bounce, and the keeping is the scan. People come and if you look at eye test, they quickly scan, and contrast helps them find. So if they want to book, grab a ticket real quick, contrast will be like, oh, there's a book now button, and off they go. You want to make it as easily as possible for them to essentially give you money and become a customer.
Yeah.
So
Pretty much. And one thing to maybe keep in mind, especially if you're redesigning or designing your site for the first time, think about how you use other people's websites. When you go onto somebody's website, you're probably not going to read a ton of information immediately. Maybe pop-ups, those are really annoying. If you think you have this information that's really important that people need to know as soon as they get onto your website, if somebody's going to your site for the first time and they see a bunch of stuff popping up in their face, they're probably going to think that your site is maybe not secure, or it's an overload of information. People don't read, really, when you think about it. How many times you go on somebody's site, you're not reading through the entire thing. You want little short snippets of information that make it easy to find what you're looking for.
yeah, and then you mentioned security too. Having the little lock button in the browser. It's the SSL certificate. It's an extra fee for your website, but if you don't have it, Google will straight up put it looks horrible in the search results. They'll put like a red, this site is not secure, and no one's going to click on that if they see that warning. So they think something's bad going to happen. Plus, you want to make people feel comfortable. If you envision them like pulling out their credit card and booking online, you want to make sure the site's secure so that they feel safe and they trust you. And then you mentioned a few slides back, Jessica, of the moms doing a lot of the bookings. Think about who your audience is with your website. So if a lot of your customer base, the people actually making the bookings, is it mothers, is it fathers, is it teenagers, kind of know, because that'll help you craft, what kind of information they might be looking for. Are they looking for frequently asked questions or safety things, or how much fun it is, or a waiver that they have to sign? Just think about who your audience is, and kind of craft and tailor everything around them for what they're looking for. And ideally just so they know they're in the right spot and they can quickly get the information they need, and hopefully get some tickets too.
Exactly. And one thing that we've recently started using that is a really helpful tool, I think, for a lot of people who are looking to see what parts of their, web presence are working the best for them, is maybe something like Google Analytics, which it tracks who comes to your website, how long they stay, what they're looking at. So what parts of your site are really doing the most for you. And it's an easy way to kind of tailor down what needs to be done to speak to your customers the most.
Yeah, and if you have Google Analytics installed, it's free, but there's a report in there that is really good, because as you're spending money with your marketing budget, that could be anything from a print ad to an email blast through a potential partner or something like that, or you're running digital ads somewhere, you're buying banners on a local news site, whatever the case. And Google Analytics is a report where you can see all your traffic by channel. And that'll be really good, because especially if you're spending money, you can kind of see, if you set up like the bookings integration with Google Analytics, you can see where people are coming from and where they're booking. So for example, if you just spent $1,000 on a banner ad for the local news site, and you go in Google Analytics and you see that it's sent 0 bookings, then maybe not to spend that 1,000 next month, to spend it somewhere else. Maybe on the flip side, you might have bought a Google ad and maybe it sent a bunch of people that bought tickets, and maybe it just kind of helps help you evaluate what's working with your digital marketing and what's not, and can help you make better decisions as far as where to spend your marketing budget, and what's working best for you.
Exactly.
All right, so getting into the digital marketing stuff. So we talked about how important it is to have a website. some of the things that you need to keep in mind with the website, right? So making sure it's responsive, that it looks good on all different device types, that it's easy to book, whether if you're on a computer or a mobile, click to call, all that fun stuff. Now, that is how you really kind of put your best foot forward and convert the traffic that you get. But how do you drive traffic? Um, is one of the things too that we didn't touch on the mobile side is the website side is making sure that your site loads fast.
Loading quickly.
Yeah, that has an impact on your search engine optimization. But more importantly, people are just impatient now. That everything's got to be like now. And if your image heavy site is taking like 10 seconds to load, you can kiss your online sales goodbye because people are too impatient. They're not going to wait around for it.
And I think that for some people that can kind of circle back to maybe feeling like your site's not secure, which isn't necessarily the case, but if you don't know, why wouldn't you think that?
Yeah, and then so some of the ways to drive traffic, you had touched on search engine optimization before. So without getting into like super geek and making it into an SEO class, some of the basics are just think about like what people would type in to Google to find your service. So if it's like a boat tour, like Charleston Boat Tours, or like Myrtle Beach, parasailing, things like that. So just think about, usually it's going to be like your service plus the geo modifier, which is like your city. And you want to make sure you incorporate terms like that into your site. That's probably the most basic of things that you can do. Same thing with making sure your site is secure, making sure that it loads fast. All that stuff is going to help your cause as far as showing up for more results. We talked about, kind of sorry, it's my phone. The OTAs, but on that note, obviously we know that the TripAdvisors and people like that can send traffic and bookings, but also there's other places to get listed. Yelp, Google, all the different Google Maps, all the yellow pages. Like, especially most of your businesses are going to be in a local market, so making sure that you're found in all those like directories that people actually use. And then that you pay attention to your reviews, because again, the online reputation, I know people, myself included, reviews can really like dictate if you're going to choose somebody or not choose somebody.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want somebody to leave a review saying that their credit card information was stolen because they tried to book something through your website. You want it to be safe. You want it to be easily accessible. And you want people to be able to find what they need to find, which are really the three probably most important things as far as maintaining your website for the company that you're running.
Yeah, and then search engine optimization, SEO works, but it takes time. Even if you're aggressive, it could be a year before you're kind of showing up. So the next best thing is to pay for the traffic on Google and Bing. So again, it just goes back to what are people typing in to find your services and your activities. Parasailing, Myrtle Beach, golf cart rental, Florida, different things like that. And so you can buy that traffic on Google and Bing, which again, like they provide tools, like the ads can be click to call if they're on a mobile device. You can integrate it with your website, which has the online booking. So, those ads can run 24 hours a day. So people can find your website 24 hours a day. They can book. And, again, think about it as like you put money in the TripAdvisors. I need to put money in the Googles and the websites, so that way I have a holistic strategy. Google ads, Bing ads. Also, too, those ways are good ways to be found. But depending on your activity, depending on your service, Facebook ads can be good as well, because that helps generate that demand and plant those seeds in people's minds, that aren't necessarily actively searching, but they might be the right type of audience, for your for your business.
I think Facebook ads are really great, especially if you're trying to push locally. If you're looking for a lot of local traffic, Facebook, if you pay into it, which It's generally not an overly expensive thing. You can set a budget and they'll work with whatever you have. And you can definitely push that to your target audience within your area pretty easily and get all the statistics that you need to, determine whether or not something like that really even works for you.
And for Facebook, since you have to get a little creative, since they're not necessarily like Googling what you do. So different things that work well on Facebook is, offers, any kind of discounts or
Yeah.
specials. Also getting creative. Like one example I saw is when COVID hit and a lot of the tour companies here locally, they weren't even allowed to be open, because of
Mhm.
COVID. And then when things slowly started to open up, I know a guy that had a tour company that got creative and made some like local specials, like, hey, ready to get out of the house, like we got this
Yeah.
bus, it's all wiped down clean, we have all the stuff,
Yeah.
like thinking out of the box, like, if most of your folks are coming from out of town, what about the local people that would like, to do your stuff as well?
Yeah.
Schools, groups, businesses, stuff like that. You can just have different events. You have to get a little creative with Facebook, but you can find a budget that'll work, so just try
Mhm.
different stuff out. And also to local media and partnerships, thinking about what are the sites that your audience goes to. Another example is like if you have if a lot of your customers are from out of town, they're on vacation, then what about like the local visitor center
Yeah.
website? They typically have a lot of traffic of people that are coming to the area looking for stuff to do, and your business might be exactly what they need. So
Yeah.
putting those
Exactly.
partnerships together like that can prove fruitful as well, driving quality traffic and potential customers back to your website.
And I think with the local media, that tends to be really, those advertisements tend to show up a lot in like newspapers and local news stations and things like that. So if you maybe have an audience that is more prone to reading those types of news sources and things like that, that could be a really good way to advertise to them. Maybe you do have an older audience or something like that. People like seeing ads in newspapers. People will go to a local news website every day and kind of read those things. So definitely depending on the type of business and the people that you're marketing to, those are, very strong tools to be able to use.
And I guess at the end of the day, it's just making sure that you carve out budget, for this
Hmm.
stuff. So, so I think I was talking to Mark recently that had a good example. You're not cutting your own hair, are you? Let's hope not. You're going to a professional to cut your hair. Most of us aren't trying to fix our own car. We take our cars to professionals to get worked on. If you're not a website designer, don't try to be a website designer and create your own website. It might look like you tried to create your own website. So allocate budget towards it. Start that foot off start your impressions off on the right foot.
Hmm.
Um, Invest in having a good website. Like I said, your best competitor, chances are they probably have a great website. Could be why they're doing so well. So invest in a good website and invest in driving people there. If you're carving out budget for the OTAs, carve out budget to give to Google for traffic. Carve out some to for local partnerships. Make sure it's included in your budget so it gets done. And then if you're spending time or money on it, make sure you're tracking and measuring it. We talked
Hmm.
about the Google Analytics. You just want to make sure that, all this stuff can drive, most of it can do a good job driving, customers. You just want to make sure that it's profitable,
Yeah.
that you're not spending more than you're getting back. But a lot of this stuff, give it time. Generally need to run any kind of marketing campaign at least 90 days to really kind of get things dialed in, try different setups until you get it working. So
Hmm.
definitely be patient, but definitely carve out budget for you and make sure you track and measure. So, because once you find those levers, then you're in control of your growth.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So if you're looking to kind of get started with some of this stuff, um, Indexic makes the booking side and the streamlining side and the growing sales side super, super easy. If you have a website that's on the internet, Indexic's booking widgets can work with the site. So, getting the links that can open up the online booking, they make it super easy. No more callbacks, no more lost sales, no more paying your team to like hammer the phones with bookings all day. Just streamline it, let the tool do it for you. And then, include some of the stuff like waivers as well. So you don't have to worry about it. Your customer doesn't have to worry about it when they come. They all want to do it online anyway. Let them do it online. Indexic makes it easy and affordable for tour and rental operators to get started with this stuff.
Yes.
And if you did want to get started, speaking of easy, all you got to do is just reach out to Indexic. They can show you a live demo and show you how it would look on a site just like yours. They work with tour and rental operators. It's all they do. It's what they did. They know the business. They know, what kind of booking widgets that you need. They'll show you, what the pricing would look like. I know there's no out-of-pocket, no setup fees, no monthly subscriptions. So it's a really fair model. And get it going. So make sure you have a good site. They can also help you if you don't have a website, or if you don't have a good one, they can point you in the right direction. But I think we've kind of covered the importance of having a good website, the value of it, making sure that you can get sales 24/7 via online booking, and investing in that marketing. So what questions, do we have any questions that have come through? Let's see, let me check. Okay, so Bill asked if we had some recommendations for websites. I know, Jessica, you had mentioned like the Square, the Wix, the WordPress. If you're going to do it yourself, I would say try to find a professional template, because that way you're just swapping out logos and information, but the design itself is professional. A lot of the templates nowadays are responsive designs, so you'd be covered there as well.
And usually with even a basic plan on a web building site like that, you'll get a couple dozen different types of templates, depending on what, that can fit multiple different types of businesses. So there's definitely a lot of options. There's a lot of help that they offer within those sites themselves. So it's not as intimidating as it sounds like it would be.
And if you don't have the time, to create it yourself, definitely reach out to Indexic. They can point you in the right direction on where to get a professional website created for you. All right, let's go back to the questions here. Okay, so Matt is asking about Google Ads. He says, I've seen there's different types. Are there any types of ads that you would recommend? Yeah, good question. So Google now, they've come so far where they have just like a massive suite of products, really that can meet any type of need. So for example, from a Google Ads perspective, they have like two different ways you can kind of play, I guess. One is like a kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I want to do this and I need help. They have campaigns to where basically you just like answer a few questions, and Google will go out and just manage it for you. Essentially, their algorithms, and they'll help you create the ads. They'll put them in all the places. That's probably the easiest way. I think they call it smart campaigns, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they do it by if it's like a industry that can kind of help with that. You're probably not going to get the best performance, meaning like since it's all mostly automated, you're probably going to pay a little more for like cost per acquisition, but it should work to drive business. Or you could, either hire someone that knows how to do it, or if you're familiar with some of that stuff, you could do it yourself. But any kind of Google search-based ads, those are the ones generally that you're going to want to mess with. Those are the ones that it's keyword. If someone types in a keyword, you want your ad to show. All the other types of ads, there's a time and a place. But as far as driving like quick traffic, targeted traffic, I would say the Google search ads. Either they're smart ads, let them take it over for you, or you can kind of do it yourself. Like I said, if you kind of understand like what people type in, what kind of searches, you could use that. But the search-based Google ads are going to be the best bet.
Pretty affordable too. You can give Google a $20 budget and they'll work with that if that's all you have. And they'll fit in as much as they possibly can with whatever set budget you have. So it's not like you have to spend hundreds of dollars to even get started on it. I mean, it can be just a couple bucks to kind of see how it works and how it works out for you.
Yeah, as long as you're tracking and measuring it, you can kind of discover, how it works, but also keep in mind that as you're playing around, as you're driving traffic, just give everything a fair shot. About 90 days, you should know,
Yeah.
if it's going to work or not. It takes a little time for things just to get dialed in, but definitely give it a try. The Google search ads. All right, let's see. Do we have any more questions? I think that's everything that I'm seeing. Do you see any more questions, Jessica?
I don't. I think that's it.
All right, cool. Well, if you guys want to learn more about, getting a new website built, about